Hi, I'm Tim Pittaway, and this video is about transitional vulnerabilities, moving between systems. It's a reflection on my journey with my family, and we traveled from South Africa to Scotland over 3 years. How I became more aware of transitional vulnerabilities, and this is where my interest for transitional vulnerabilities had really kicked in. And so it began with us, moving in all the way from Gqeberha, which is 10,000 kilometers away from the most southern city, one of the most southern cities in southern Africa. And so there's a photo of us sitting at Stirling Castle and looking over the horizon there and just probably thinking, what have we done? Where are we now? What's the next step? And what lies around the next corner? And these changes and unknown changes is probably where this begins. So in this video, I'm going to be looking at what we experienced through this journey. And this is where it's kind of a case study of what vulnerabilities we have, and then how do these vulnerabilities actually change over the 3 years while we were in Scotland. So first of all, I want to talk about the national insurance change and also the healthcare and the differences between South Africa and Scotland, and what we experienced with the healthcare, the difficulty of purchasing a vehicle, and we just think that would be something simple for us to have been able to do when we landed here, but a lot more difficult than I'd planned, and the vulnerabilities of not having a vehicle and how that could actually be something challenging for a family. Then the international costs for education. I've got both teenagers looking at going to university. That was also something that was changing and developing from a cost point of view, and not realizing that we would be paying international costs from day one. And then also the change with regard to policies and the visas. When we got here, the intention was to renew your visa every 3 or so years, so that we'd get to a point of indefinite leave to remain, so we don't have to keep buying or purchasing a visa up front. But that changed. The government changed from a 5-year to a 10-year, and so those goalposts changed while we're here. So there were some vulnerabilities that had impact on us, and how these vulnerabilities changed is the story today. So let's begin with the visa ladder. For those that don't know, when you sign up to move to Scotland or the UK, you have to pay upfront for a visa. And often the visa is only for a certain period of time, so it's every 3 years. And so there are certain kind of milestones. So you'll have a 3-year period of first visa purchase, then you'll extend that to another 3 years, so that you could probably get hopefully to indefinite leave to remain, which you have to pay for some more funding up front. And then if you want to become a British citizen, you've got to pay. So what we were looking at over a 10-year period for a family of 4 and a few dogs and a cat, we had to keep the nest egg of £45,000 available for this change. And you'll see how our financial situation was evolving, but we needed to keep this nest egg while we were going, and this was a vulnerability of making sure you had the money available. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So when it comes to national insurance, first of all, you have to pay up front. All right, there's an upfront payment for NHS. So let's say that the family, when we got here, we have to pay £7,000. That also changed. The national insurance fund moved from 7,000 to 12,000. So we have to pay upfront for national insurance. So national insurance does not come free for those that land here to become researchers or professionals in the UK. So that was a change in that vulnerability of, yes, we need the insurance, but that also changed the pricing while we were here. And then the cost of NHS did not necessarily mean that we were getting the same health cover while compared to South Africa. We were, both academics at universities. We had strong medical aids, which meant we had quite a strong cover with regard to dentists, hospital plans, and doctor visits. But when we came to Scotland, what we realized then was that the NHS has only a certain limit to what you need. If I went to a dentist, for example, and yes, NHS paid for the checkup, but the dentist wanted to put in fillings, which then I had to pay another £500 for. And for a time, for a family of 4 going to dentists every time, at £300 to £400 for changes in the mouth, that is extra cost. So you can see how these vulnerabilities start building up. There's a change in costing for an NHI. There's a change when you realize, oh wow, we've got to pay extra for the bits and pieces. And then something we took for granted was actually having arranged credit for the bank when arriving here. So because normally you buy a car and let's say credit, not everybody can buy, put down a lump sum of cash for a car. And if anybody knows, moving kids between schools and sporting events, or if you want to travel a little bit off into the land beyond the public transport, a car would really be beneficial. And cars was something these vehicles were really for us important. Coming and going in South Africa, and so we just, again, there's assumptions here. And I think in assumptions as well as a vulnerability, you assume that it's going to be the same. You're going to assume you're going to have the same benefits, but it's not. We weren't able to get any credit landing here because nobody knew us. Nobody knew, how we handle our money. So again, we had to then pay upfront for a car between 8 and 15,000 rand with no credit. That also, takes a big bite out of that that nest egg, which we were hoping to hold for our visas. And then the education barriers. Although our children had primary and secondary education in South Africa when we landed here, we had to pay international fees, and so that can cost anything between 65 and over £100,000 if you want to pay. Get your children into international into universities. You've got to pay international fees. That is not for free. And the thing that we had in South Africa, because we were academics, we had the opportunity for our children to go to university for free because we worked at universities. But now that we come to Scotland, it's something extra. So you can see how these small little bites will add up at the end of the day. And I think the big thing that hit us really hard was the policy change within the UK government. They decided to change the visa indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10 years, which mean that we have to find more money for our visas. We had to find more money for our NHI up front. And so in reality, what we were planning on 11,000, we were looking now at over 15,000 to pay up front. And that changed in the middle of while we were here. So you can see how this kind of there's a web of vulnerability here. There's this £45,000 that we need to keep aside for the long run, but at the same time, there's these health gaps, and there's that vulnerability of health gaps, and that's changing. And in this transitional process, our vulnerabilities are becoming a little bit more exposed. Our education, our children now can't go to the universities maybe, and we have to now find a new system of education for them. And we have mobility restrictions. If we didn't have a car, unfortunately, we were able to get ourselves a car. So, these aren't isolated incidents, but they compound into, let's say, a big vulnerability. And you can see how this transition of these small little vulnerabilities all added up. So this is a lived experience of transitional vulnerabilities. Yes, there was assumptions. Yes, we could have done more homework. There was uncertainty. There's high entry costs into the UK, which a lot of academics don't understand or realize that you do need a big lump sum when you land here for the long run. And then the policy shocks. The rules can change while you're here. Even a skilled visa could be taken away from you at any time. It's not fixed. All right. So from here on, I will be looking at some of my other research themes, I have reflected on, the emerging farmers that I worked with, their vulnerabilities. I'll be also reflecting on the nature-based solutions projects and the vulnerabilities within that. So these are just some of the things that I really become interested in. What are the vulnerabilities? How do they compound? And how do vulnerabilities change over a period of time? So yeah, just in a nutshell, there were upfront costs. And this sometimes can also block entry for many. And halfway through the process, things can change. So there's this transition. And I think what was really important for us and what helped us over this is the people in this transition. There were many other South Africans. There were many other people of different nations that we traveled with and could ask questions, and that assisted us and gave us advice on where to go to, what doctors to go to, where are the places that we could assist us with education. So that is really important, that you travel alongside others that are possibly in the same transition. We all kind of working through it together was really a benefit. So that's my history of transitional vulnerabilities in Scotland, and how my family navigated these changes and how the vulnerabilities kind of evolved.